to be in Genesis 14. Genesis chapter 14. This is another good example of why bulletins should be printed on Saturday night. I come in on Monday morning and I think I know what we're going to talk about the next Sunday. And I had promised you a sermon that had to do with tithing, of explaining that practice and how far back it goes, those kinds of things. But there's so much more to this passage that we're going to have to spend a couple of weeks talking about something else before we come back around to talk about that, which I promised you. I want us to talk a little bit about the character of Abraham and introduce this mysterious man named Melchizedek that shows up in the life of Abraham for just a very short period of time. He's described, but not in a great bit of detail. And then he doesn't show up again until really you get a glimpse of him in the Psalms. And then again, the Hebrew writer in the New Testament picks him up and talks about him in reference to Jesus and his high priesthood. So we'll talk a little bit more about Melchizedek maybe next week, but I just want to introduce him this week. When I was teaching Old Testament at Northwestern, this was on the test. So I want you to memorize how to spell Melchizedek. It's to the tune of the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse song, Melchizedek, Melchizedek. I never had a single student miss that on the test for some reason. That one they could remember. Everything else went out the window, but that one they could remember. I want us to read beginning in 14:14. Genesis 14, beginning in verse 14. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and all the other people. After Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is, the king's valley. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of the Most High God. And he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, With raised hand I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten, and the share that belongs to the men who went with me, to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share. I want us to notice, first of all, the company that Abraham is keeping. You remember God called him up from Ur of the Chaldees, brought him up into the land of Canaan. He had Lot with him. Lot separated off and went and pitched his tents over towards Sodom and Gomorrah. He gets taken captive and carried off by these other kings who had come to make war against Sodom and the surrounding area. And Abraham has to go and rescue him. But Abraham is an extraordinarily wealthy and powerful man. He doesn't own the land of Canaan. He has a lot of possessions, and he is living in the land of Canaan. But he is a very powerful man, and other people have come to recognize that. What's the most famous person you've ever met? Somebody just ran into somebody that was really, really famous. When I was probably, I don't know, 18 maybe, I flew up to Wisconsin to help them out in Sheboygan for a few weeks. And while I was in the airport in Chicago, O'Hare, the place is a mess. DFW is bad. O'Hare was just amazing. But while I was sitting there waiting on my plane connection, several extraordinarily tall people came walking by. And I'm watching them, I'm thinking, these guys look kind of familiar. And finally, there's one extraordinarily tall guy that walks by about that far from me, and it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and or Lou Alcindor, if you prefer. But he walked that close to me. Never saw me. I never talked to him. But that was my scrape of greatness. Abraham is having lunch with dignitaries. He's on his way back from defeating these kings, and the king of Sodom comes out to meet him. He wants to thank him personally for the work that he's done. And so while they're having their conversation, or while they're together in this place, then we have another very, very important person show up, but he's just kind of mysterious. He's identified as the king of Salem. Anybody know where Salem is? Jerusalem. You just don't know that you do. Yeah, it's Jerusalem. It later gets another name added to it, Jerusalem. And Jerusalem means something like foundation of peace or place of peace. So that's where Melchizedek was living. He was living in Jerusalem as the priest of the Most High God in Abraham's time. This is a long way before we have the 12 tribes of Israel, before we have the tribe of Levi, before we have Moses and Aaron, before we have Aaron as the high priest. None of that stuff is even imagined at this point. And all of a sudden we have a guy that's identified as the priest of the Most High God and as the king of Jerusalem. That's an amazing thing. And like I said, he comes in and he goes out and he just disappears from the rest of the Old Testament history. The Hebrew writer uses that as a jumping off place to talk about the high priesthood of Jesus. So I decided I would go read some articles about the name of Jerusalem. I read 3 different articles, and I got 3 different definitions. And so everybody has their own take on how this should be understood. But they all agreed on one thing, that the community had been occupied since about 4000 BC. This was an extremely old community. So long before David comes along and conquers it, and long before Solomon builds a temple there, we have a guy who is identified, as the king of Salem and the priest of the Most High God. Later on in Abraham's life, he'll go back to this spot when God says, I want you to offer your son Isaac as a sacrifice. I don't know, it doesn't say, whether he has any contact with Melchizedek when he makes that trip. It's just, we're microcosm. We're looking at Abraham and Isaac. We're not looking at anybody else at that point. But he goes back to this place to offer up Isaac as a sacrifice. A couple of thousand years after that, Jesus goes to this place and is offered up as the perfect sacrifice for all of us. And again, this is several generations before anybody thinks about a priest in honor of God at Jerusalem. Second thing I want us to notice is that Abraham has an extreme dedication to God's reputation. He wants to make sure that everybody understands that the fact that he's doing so well is because God is with him. Remember the promises God made to him when he called him up out of Ur? I will be with you. I will be your God. You will be a blessing to other people. Those that bless you, I will bless. Those that curse you, I will curse. I will make of you a great nation. All of the people of the world will be blessed through you. All of those things God is promising Abraham. Abraham takes that very seriously. So when the king of Sodom says, congratulations on your victory, why don't you keep all the stuff that you brought back as spoils? And Abraham says, I would not even take so much as a shoelace of the things that we brought back, because I don't want anybody to ever say that the king of Sodom made me rich. Everything I've gotten because the Lord is taking care of me. I love his willingness to give up on stuff to hold on to his standards. So here's a little mini sermon for those of us who may be tempted from time to time. You don't need to lower your standards if you're allied with the King of the universe. Right? God is in charge. You're okay. You don't have to take the low road. You don't have to accept things from people of lesser character. You don't have to let other people be your provider. God will take care of you. Later on, John the Baptist uses this same imagery when he says, there's one coming after me, and I'm not even worthy to untie his shoes, to touch the strap of his sandal. Think about the least of all the treasures that Abraham might have been bringing back in tow from this battle. What would be the absolute least? Just the shoelace. I don't even want that. And then John the Baptist says, I'm not even worthy to reach down and undo his sandal. The lowest of the lowest of the low, because the God of the universe is taking care of you. They both knew their place in the plan of things, and they both knew that God was in control. And then I want us to notice the theology of the passage. Melchizedek brought out bread and wine. Did you notice that? Now, on one hand, bread and wine were just table fare. There was always bread, there was always wine on those tables. It was the easiest way to have sustenance and to have something that you could drink that you could trust. A lot of times they would mix the wine in with the water. So you might have 2/3 wine, 1/3 water, or if the water was of a purer nature, you might have 2/3 water, 1/3 wine. Just a little bit of alcohol content to kind of clean up the batch of water that you were using. But it also had a ceremonial meaning to it. When Jesus comes to the planet, he gets his disciples around him on that last night. And what does he bring out? Bread and wine. He takes the bread and he breaks it. He says, I want you to all eat this because it represents my body. Take, eat, this is my body. And he takes the cup after supper. He says, I want you to all drink from this because this is my blood. So it takes on a completely new and different meaning when Jesus gets hold of it. So we go to Jesus and then we project back through all those years, 2,000 years prior, to Melchizedek, and we add meaning to what Melchizedek was doing because of what we knew that Jesus did with the bread and wine. So Melchizedek brings out bread and wine, and he offers blessings for Abraham. Now, do you ever allow people to do that? We don't do it much anymore. People that will actually just come and offer a blessing on your life, verbally, to just say to you, may God bless you, God give you good things. We say it kind of offhandedly, not formally, hope things go well. God bless you when we sneeze. God bless you. We give these just kind of informal encouragements that we give each other. This was a very formal, very thought out thing that Melchizedek did when he brought out the bread and the wine. Let me read that to you again. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, the creator of heaven and earth. And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. So while Abraham is telling the king of Sodom, I don't want anything you've got to give me because my God is taking care of me, Melchizedek shows up and goes, you got it right. I will back up what you just said. I will back up who you think you are and where you think you fit into the history of the world. Your God is taking care of you. Don't let anybody tell you any differently. And so he gives him a blessing. And then, of course, Abraham gives Melchizedek a tenth of all the spoils. Now, whether it's just the spoils that he's giving him, whether it's a tenth of all that Abraham had, it just says he gave him a tenth of everything. It doesn't go into any detail as to what it was. But it's significant because in another 600 years or so, the children of Israel are going to start paying tithes to the tribe of Levi. Right? So it just kind of sets a precedent, kind of sets a number, and then when the law comes along, that number shows up in the law. But in this occasion, on this particular day, why he did that, we don't know. There's no law, there's no suggestion, there's no thundering voice from heaven that says, now that Melchizedek, my king, my priest, has blessed you, then give him 10%. We don't have anything. Just that Abraham did. And so that's kind of the beginning of where we'll be going in our discussion in the next couple of weeks on the idea of tithing. Well, I'm just going to leave that with you. I've had a busy few days, so I just want to let y'all chew on that a little bit. Next week is Mother's Day, yes? So we may wander from the script again. Hopefully tomorrow morning I'll know what I'm preaching next Sunday, and I'll put it in the bulletin. And if that's not what it is, tough. We'll just do what we do when we get there. Glad that you're here. Glad that you took time to be in the presence of the Lord today. And glad you chose to be here to do that. If we can help you in any way, we'd love to do that as we stand and sing.
What can wash away my sin? Nothing but